Um, um, well, Henry and I are really good friends. We've known each other for a very long time. This is my story of how I first met Henry. It started out very much like the others. I was at my cottage. Princess Celestia sent me the letter in the map. I followed it, went through the portal, and, well, ended up on Sodor. Well, I got to the station where I saw that there was a lot of engines over there, and one of them seemed to look worried. He was a long tender engine with a number 3 on his tender. He was green. I decided to go over and see what was wrong. I was a little nervous. Well, of course I was nervous. I had never met a steam engine with a face before. So I decided to go slowly. He didn't seem to be moving at the moment anyway. So I walked towards him slowly but surely. When he saw me coming, he jumped. "Clattering carriages!" he cried out. I cried out. "He talks!" I said. "It talks!" The green engine cried out. I flipped backwards so far that I accidentally landed on my back. I was okay though, don't worry. The green engine tried to chuff away, but bashed into the buffers. I hadn't meant to scare the engine. I guess you don't normally see yellow ponies with wings and pink hair and bluish-green eyes with butterflies on their sides. Well, I went closer. The engine whimpered and winced, and so I said in my calmest voice, "Don't be scared. I won't hurt you." "Are you sure?" the engine said. "I'm positive," I answered. "My name is Fluttershy," I said. "I come from a place called Equestria. I was sent here by Princess Celestia. And what's your name?" The engine looked around and then looked at me again and said, "I'm Henry. I don't believe I've ever seen a creature like you before." "Well, don't worry, Henry," I said. I assure you I won't do you any harm." And so I told him all about where I was from. But just then Princess Celestia came by, along with a stubby man. His name was Sir Topham Hatt. "Well now, what do we have here?" he said, looking at me. I tried to hide my face. "This is Fluttershy," said Princess Celestia. "She's going to be working with Henry." I uncovered my face a little. "Well then, I suppose Henry shall show her what she needs to do," she said. "Yes, sir," said Henry. Then Henry looked at me. I still had my mane behind my face. Now I too was feeling a little scared. So Henry said in his kindest voice, "Don't worry, Fluttershy. I'm sorry I was scared of you earlier. I came out of hiding." "That's okay, Henry. And I'm sorry I gave you a jumping scare." "That's okay," he said. "I'm just not used to seeing things that are outside this world." And so Henry took me to, well, he showed me what he did for his work. And sometimes I showed him, well, and being a Pegasus, I flew along with him. And I had seen that some of the other ponies had met the other engines already. And I was pretty happy. But one day, when I came to the shed, Henry wasn't so happy. He looked very miserable. "What's wrong, Henry?" I asked. "I suffer dreadfully and no one cares," said Henry. "Cares about what?" I asked. "Whenever I try to do my work nowadays, I suddenly don't feel any stronger than I usually am." "You mean like you're getting sick?" I asked. "Something like that," Henry replied. "Rubbish, Henry," said a voice from not too far away. It was James on the other side of the berth. "You don't work hard enough," he said. And he left. "How dare he say that?" I said. "Never mind him, Fluttershy," Henry said, sounding very, very weak indeed. "He's always been like that." "Well, that's terrible," I said. Later that day, Sir Topham Hatt came. If we can't work properly, we'll have to get another engine to replace you," said Sir Topham Hatt. This made Henry, the driver, the fireman, and me, we all felt very sad. I didn't want another engine to replace Henry, because I had already become great friends with him. I even showed him how much I loved all the forest and the animals. So one day, Henry was going to take his train. Sir Topham Hatt was there. He had taken off his hat and his coat, which is what he normally always wears, and he put on blue overalls, looking like one of the workmen. You know, the people who controlled Henry. I try to stoke up his fire, but it doesn't make enough heat. I heard everything they said from inside the cab. Well, I wasn't in the cab. I was flying right beside Henry, and I just happened to hear them talking. Well, Henry tried his best. I even tried to encourage him. "You can do it, Henry. I know you can." But no matter how hard he tried, Henry just couldn't pull the train. "Oh dear," I thought, "he must be very ill." So, Edward decided to take the train for him. And so Henry moved into a nice empty siding. The driver, when we had stopped, I landed right beside Henry. I'm so sorry, Henry. I wish I knew what was wrong with you. Then I could find a way to help you. Then the driver spoke. He was holding a big piece of coal in his hand. The fact is, the coal is wrong, he said. We've had a poor lot lately, and today it's worse. What's wrong with the coal, I asked. No one knows for sure, Fluttershy. There are lots of different kinds of coals, but apparently all the other engines have bigger fireboxes. Henry's is small and can't make the heat. Oh dear, I thought. So that was another thing that made Henry stand out. His firebox was much too small. Poor thing, I thought. Then Sir Topham Hatt had an idea. They would replace his ordinary coal with Welsh coal. So the next day, the Welsh coal came. Now we'll show them, Henry, old fellow, said his fireman and driver. I was rather excited myself. Oh boy, Henry, I can't wait to see what happens. They stuck some of the new Welsh coal into his tender and then put it in his firebox. Then he covered the walls with smaller lumps. I couldn't really tell what was going on inside the cab, though. But I heard Henry complain. You're spoiling my fire, he said. There, Henry, don't worry. I gently patted his forehead with my hoof. Henry smiled a bit. I understood him very well. Soon Henry was steaming wonderfully. So he decided to try to pull his train, and this time he did it. He pulled it like a professional. I feel so well, I feel so well, he said with joy. Henry was cured at last. Oh, thank goodness, Henry, I said happily. When we reached another station, Thomas and Twilight were there. Henry said, Hurry up, lazy bones, I don't have time for you all day. And he hurried off. I flew after him. Behind me I could hear Thomas say, Well, 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 have you ever seen anything like it? I flew up beside Henry. That wasn't very nice for you to call him that. I was only teasing, Fluttershy. I was puzzled. As in mean teasing or just being funny teasing? Just being funny teasing, he replied. Aren't you happy that I'm finally going to be really useful? Yes, I am. And we're going to be the best friends ever, I said. I might even bring some of my animal friends to show you. I'd like that very much, said Henry. And one day I'll show you to one of my favorite places, the forest. Oh, I'd love that so much, I said. So, the two of us were happy. But Henry was even happier after he had an accident with a train called the Flying Kipper. He was rebuilt, He had a new shape and a bigger firebox, and he didn't need special coal anymore. And when he did show me the forest, it was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. So, that's my story of how I first met Henry. I know there's not much in it, but I was trying to remember as best I could all that happened. The story might sound a bit familiar to you. Well, this is Fluttershy saying goodbye, good night, and stay well, everyone.